It's like I'll have my laptop open and my. Domain first.
Yeah, that was his first question to me. He's like, if I sell these shares, you can let me stay on outcome.
Wake up.
Oh.
I knew it's like, I never know. I did that one yesterday. Always something new. Yeah.
Right. All right, let me know when we have the technical problems solved.
Yes, too.
Yeah.
We already did.
Yeah, I talked to Brad and sent the PCO over to the
Dude.
person at the city who's
He's right above
responsible for
Elliot.
transferring the money.
We're good to go.
Okay.
No, that's meant to. It's got no else. Yeah, no, it has. CC, I had. Didn't it all know?
Yes, that is Steve.
So Steve, you're. Like, who is that masked man?
I couldn't hear you. What was that?
Who is that masked man up there?
Still good.
Okay.
Yeah, can you?
Or
pass
online,
it up
but-
there, though?
Hey, Sarah. Who else is online? Our minute taker asked. Has like. Lala, Mandy, Trevor. Trevor. And then staff. Valentine's. She's the editor and taker.
Scott's the only one. Okay. All right, everyone, good afternoon and welcome to the regular meeting of the Yampa Valley Housing Authority. The first thing is call to order, which we just did, and the next item is public comment. Do we have, yes?
You have public comment.
Okay,
Happy me.
okay.
Those of you who don't know me, I'm Noreen Moore. I've been a resident of the valley for a very, very long time. And I know some of you, of course, you know me. I've come here today to speak about Jason and his leaving of your agency. And what I wanted to say was, number one, I have the utmost regard for Jason and also for his team and for the things that he has accomplished. And I feel as though I'm a record for this, that he is an asset, a very big asset. And I know that times have been rough because there's been some negative people that have been out to hang you dry. And I know that some of that was fearful and, monitoring. I saw the stickers on the poles. I did the DST, and I happen to know that some of the people that were against you were part of that. They didn't hesitate to say how they wanted you out of this position. So really what I wanted to get at was the fact of, from the paper that of course doesn't disclose too much other than you both agreed to separation, it looks as though you bent the knee. You bent the knee to those who are negative and vociferous. And it's like, I don't know exactly what motivated you, but this is how it looks. And I would say, very honestly, if you did bend the knee and that had a role, I would hope that you'd reconsider everything you did. One of the things that I think should be done is make him look good. If he is going to be continued with this agreement, I want all of you to really put in something for the paper that is complimenting him and not leaving him look like he's the problem. I don't think Jason was the problem. Jason is a problem sometimes. I know that. I've been to lots of public meetings. I know that. But don't let him be wearing the death knell. If our community is getting to a place where they're that negative, and I know some of them, and I spoke to them, and I was stunned at how negative they were. They were like enraged, like God had come down and said, you need a lot of rage. And boy, oh boy, did they ever. And these are people I've worked with in the past, over the years, and they were never like that. So I don't know what's happening, but I do want to say that. And the other thing I wanted to say is, I was on the DST, one of the 40, and I thought, and I haven't heard a word about phase 2. I have no idea. Kind of looks like the city and the county and all of you are doing maybe a different tact, and you're going to have that input. I would say that I thought there was going to be a phase 2 for us, and that was that we would be able to have our inputs as to what kinds of things we'd like to see. Now, if that ship is going away, one, you need to notify us, otherwise it looks a little peculiar. And since communication is key, and that's been one of the problems, I think, with the Yampa Valley Housing Authority, is for you all to get in front of what's happening as opposed to being reactive and behind. Don't know why that continues to happen, but it does. Let me see, do I have anything else to say? Oh, I got lots to say, but I'm not going to say them now, and it's not pertinent right now. Thank you all for your time.
Thank
Any
you.
question of me, let me know.
Thank you, Noreen.
You bet. Thanks for it. You bet. I'm going to sit here for a moment.
I was gonna say, if you want to sit here, some of your answers maybe, some of your questions make an answer.
Soon. So I'm not soon, huh? Remember, I'm not a board member, ever.
Noreen, I'm gonna have a sandwich for you if you wanna wait.
Oh, you're so nice to me.
And I want to thank you, because I do think you're speaking for a very silent majority, so thank you.
Yeah, I wanted you to get that feedback, what it looks like, and I wonder if you could repair it.
Okay. All right, additional public comment. All right, then we will move to board comment, and I know we have several. Cool.
I can start off. I took a meeting with Michael Ann at the request of YVHA staff a couple weeks ago, and I feel it's very important that I bring forward their sentiment. And they've also asked a few items to request of this board that I want to pass along to. That meeting is in and around the transition of the ED, mutual separation agreement with Jason. Emotions were very raw in that meeting. There was a lot of anger, frustration, disappointment that they all conveyed to us. Not just about the mutual separation agreement and the process around it, but also a lack of a transition plan that was not given to the staff in any real time. They are very disappointed. That's the word that I kept taking away from that in our actions, in our process, and how this went. They do understand it's a mutual separation agreement. However, they are not. It's hard for them to not see the political influence from town, just as our public comment talked about, not playing a role in that, and to be candid, did not have an answer for them on that. But they did express their disappointment in the fact that they see a political influence starting this mutual separation agreement and the process that was around that. Subsequent to that meeting, I don't know if you all saw and separate from the housing authority, but the town of Hayden staff wrote a letter to their town council explaining that they didn't feel like they were being supported vocally by members of those council. And some staff reached back out as a follow-up and said that they also feel those sentiments of alienation and hostility from our public here in town toward the housing staff. While Jason has been the brunt of that in the past few years, staff is still feeling it pretty keenly. And they have and asked me to convey to this board that in our processes going forward, that we do a better job of vocalizing our support for the work that we are authorizing them to do, because they felt the same sentiments that letter from Hayden staff expressed. From my opinion, there is a disconnect with staff currently and this board. We as the group, I think we all know that. There is, we are in strategic planning. We had the retreat, and I believe we are going to address some of these things. But I do want to share with you the requests that staff has passed along during that process that we keep front of mind on. Staff would like a well-defined transition plan that is supportive of most staff and keeps the important work of the organization going with as minimal disruption and destabilization as possible. The organization needs a articulated vision for the future, including an understanding of what types of qualities the next leader of YVHA needs to embody to help realize that vision. The staff does understand and respect that it's the board job to set the strategic vision, hire an ED and all that. But staff does hope to be included in that process so that their perspectives can be valued. Staff has requested that during this process that there's a clear distinction between board and staff roles, governance versus operations. If you think back to that retreat that we had with our facilitators, it was the colored water exercise. While it was a little corny, even by their admittance, it does illustrate what I think staff is sitting on here of that governance versus operations from our body to staff. And finally, staff would like the future ED to be set up for success. Obviously, we agree with that. In the future, clear defined process around regular evaluations of the ED. And staff is requesting that they periodically be incorporated in a 360 review of that along with other stakeholders so that the board can get a larger input on that evaluation process. At this point, I'll let Michael Ann chime in as she was also there in the meeting with me.
I think Cole summarized it well. I can just share some of my own observations, particularly the things that surprised me in that meeting, and then those that didn't. And I think this really goes to the conversation we had at the retreat about what the kind of the systemic structure of how decisions are being made, maybe at the executive team level, the level of oversight and input that certain board members are giving staff. Maybe I was surprised at how much disconnect there was amongst in the entirety of everyone that was in the room. From my perspective, I thought they were a lot closer to a lot of the conversations that were happening at the board level, and the dynamics that were sort of driving kind of where we're at right now. And that's clear that they were not, that this came as complete and total shock to them. And so I think we need to do some self-reflection to see how did that disconnect get so great, because depending on who you are, you might not have that disconnect existed to the depth that I heard in that meeting. I think this too just really emphasizes the importance of taking the time to debrief and to take some of the tools and the processes and the just governance 101 that we were given at the retreat to apply to the organization, and to look back at how, with relevant examples of how we haven't necessarily done that, so we can better catch ourselves in the future if we slip. And just iterate that there's a lot riding on the way that the rest of this transition process goes, and it's really fragile at the staff level, and we really owe it to them to be, in an expedited but thoughtful way to add some stability to their current conditions. They are confused, scared, and there's not a steady direction set for them right now. So I think that's all I would add.
Yeah, so to put an end on this, because kind of rambling on a board member comment, but it is important that I convey this to you, because it was a very powerful meeting. A lot of, like I said, motions were raw. It's a long tenured staff that we have. They've been in the organization for a while, some decades, others multiple years. They feel very strongly about Jason personally and as a leader of this organization, and do feel the unfair alienation and hostilities toward him. They feel it just as he does. I do want to reiterate to this board that I did not get a sense that the staff is going to be derelict in their duties. Their dedication is there. They put their hearts into this. They are professionals, and it's evidenced by the successful start to the Cottonwoods lottery. They are working hard. They are just requesting more clarity, more transparency, and more structure from us as the board, which I believe is fair. And frankly, that retreat gave me a little bit of hope, because I think it's the right discussion to be having at the right time for a board with tenured members such as myself and new ones, to really get a grasp on how we want to vision out this organization, how we want to structure ourselves, and how we want to deliver these requests back to staff that are asking for nothing too untoward or anything that they shouldn't be given, to be honest. So thank you for the board member comment, and if you have any questions, let me know after the meeting.
Cole, I'd like to comment on that, and I really appreciate you saying this, because our staff is exceptional and beyond exceptional. And you're absolutely correct. I mean, Jason has built an incredibly strong team that's accomplished amazing things, and this completely blindsided them. They were shocked. I mean, Jason's got a great team, we've got a great staff, and despite all the craziness happening, they're accomplishing great things. The Cottonwoods policy everywhere. So the question is, Cole, what are you recommending the next steps? Because our next, on the April 9th meeting, we have the discussion of the transition plan. But is that soon enough? Because we need to respect our staff as asked. So what's our next steps? What do you recommend the next steps to be to accomplish this, work on it, respect the request?
As I said, I think that the retreat was a good launching point. It's quality over quickness in this instance is my read. They want something meaningful done. Not that they wouldn't appreciate it being done in a timely manner, but I don't have any specifics. But as we work through the process, I will be keeping their requests the forefront of my mind and my board member comment is to ensure that the rest of us are doing that as well.
I'll follow up on the transition plan. There's a draft, it will be distributed to the board for comment. And it's probably most appropriate that the board looks at it before we distribute it to staff.
It's a draft. It's a draft.
The draft.
Okay.
Lou, I was meant respectfully, but I think we need staff to be intricately involved beginning to the end on this. Why would we not share it with the staff and get their feedback so we have their good? I mean, why should the board look at it first? I mean, shouldn't we have their input?
We do need their input.
Yeah, so when.
I have no problem with distributing it to staff.
I think this needs to be, I mean, we need to work and respect our staff. That's what Cole just said. So I don't think it should be a top-down approach at all. And who's working on this, like, who is even leading the transition?
I wrote the transition plan.
Okay, so you're working on that now.
Yes. And also there's a description, profiles, very detailed profile of the executive director position that's associated with that.
What is my opinion? I think we need to have staff input with board input. And I think we need to, at the April meeting, we have the transition plan. I think we need to discuss how that's gonna work, from the entire governance structure of it, the whole game plan. Is that sort of what you're proposing?
And on the April 9th meeting, one of the things we're talking about now, and obviously everything is condensed, is identifying staff members that would participate in an executive search, both staff and board members, and identify that team and what they need to do. That's spelled out.
Well, I reiterate my suggestion. I think if we have a draft plan, staff should be able to have their input along for it.
I think too that definitely there's efficiency in having someone be the point person that's advancing transition plan, search parameters, process. Like the board as a whole has not given the board leadership any guardrails around what we would like to see from out of the transition plan or out of executive director search, how we are going to take a fresh look at our strategic plan. Like there's several kind of pillars that I think will inform all of these pieces that start with digesting as a group what we learned at the retreat and then having that inform each of those pillars, and that hasn't happened yet. So I guess it feels like in a way, if we were to respond to a transition plan that you've drafted, that it would be lacking some of the like high level ins. I'm going to keep using the ins and the means terminology. The ins, if you want to draft the means, I personally don't have any issue with that, but ins being solicited from the board hasn't happened. So, which I think is kind of more indicative too of just some of the staff feedback that there's a process that's happening, but
The process is not happening. There's a draft document that needs input. Period. Now, if we get that input from the board and the staff at the same time, I don't care. It's fine with me.
But I think what I'm saying is that prior to there being a draft, maybe if we had compiled some direction to inform the draft, and then you do a draft, and then we respond to it, at least then it would be reflective of some of the guardrails.
Since I have seen a draft, I will say that Lou has incorporated some of the suggestions that we had from our facilitator. So it is not, the search part is very consistent with what we saw. That's not to say, but that's the basis. So if you didn't like that and you have a different thought, then the 9th will be the appropriate time to discuss that.
I have no doubt over the quality of what it is that you've produced. I think I'm just speaking holistically about what is the process that we take as a board to do this or anything else. And that process needs some shoring up, regardless of what it is. And we just have not dedicated the time to discuss that.
I don't think we need to harp on this too long, but I think, and Michael, correct me if I'm wrong, but I almost feel like we're doing things backwards again. And this is exactly what the retreat was trying to get us out of doing. In the retreat, we talked about how too many things are coming from the executive committee down to the board. We need it to come from the board up to you guys. So the draft was created by you without, we need to flop the way we're doing things, I think is what we're hearing is we shouldn't see a draft yet until the board gives you direction to make the draft. Because I think that was what was talked about in that retreat, was just that process of the whole board being involved and then giving direction. And maybe the direction is that we create a subcommittee to create the draft and who's on that, and we nominate people. I think that's the approach that I saw coming out of that. And so I think what Michael is referring to is more of that process of right now, a lot of the negative comments we saw in the board retreat were that things were done in a silo, things were just done by the executive committee. And so we want to flip that.
And I agree 100% with Michael and saying, I thought the analogy of the foul lines was very important. And I think right now, I'm sure Lou, your draft is great because you always do a good job, but we're looking at the weeds before we look at the forest. We need to define what we want the forest to look like. And I think there's some very key high level parameters the board should have some comments on as to how this transition moves forward. And then you do the detail. So I 100% agree with what Michael's saying.
So
Can't say fake? No, maybe I can mime it.
Sorry.
Maybe I could mime it. A great candidate right there. What would you? There's a great one.
So we had this time with public comment and we are now in board comment, so.
Well, I have a good thought.
I know you do.
And it's from the public.
John.
What Noreen said at the very beginning, she did a very good job saying it. That's exactly the reason why I wanted to get back on the board. And I've said that already in some of our meetings. But that's really important because I feel like I've been out knocking on a lot of doors and talking to a lot of people that are not in my echo chamber, the whole community. And then secondly, the retreat was a good start, but we need to focus on that process. And one of the 4 things we looked at was the board is the boss. The executive committee needs to be reviewed and how their powers are. And we need to have input on everything before we have a draft or before what's going on. Because that means we're a working board. And if we don't do that, we're just kind of coming up here and having lunch and listening. And we need to do more than that. And that's why I'm on this board. So just want to reiterate that. So.
All right. Yes.
Okay, I can be the last one on this unless anyone else wants to go too. But I just wanted to second what Michael and Helico were also saying about I'm really struggling with the lack of process. And also, Lou, thank you so much for doing that work. And also, I think we really need to take a step back and define a process and how that looks before we get into drafting anything. And that's it.
can I say one more thing on this? I think the other thing that came up in the conversation with staff, and it was a very hard thing to say, but it was the truth, is that they wanted answers, of which we did not have for them. I don't think that anyone's expecting us to have, we can have a process without it having answers baked into it. And that, I think, would be an immediate first step to add some confidence behind what we intend to do and the timeline it will take to do that. And that has not been outlined. It can be super simple as in, if we're going to wait until the 9th to debrief on the retreat, when would we expect to start the executive director search? What is the plan, like the transition?
Transition plan lays that out.
What's that?
Transition plan has timeframe associated with it.
But that had, I don't know the transition plan.
It's because
The timeframe.
it's been distributed.
I agree with Michael and all the rest of these comments. We need we need to have a meeting to discuss what we're gonna do. It's been a little active around here. And we've had a mountain of meetings. resolving problems. But this is a huge challenge and it needs to be addressed, and there just hasn't been enough time. It might have been addressed a little bit better had somebody not spoken to the newspaper a few hours after we had an executive session. But I think we need to schedule a meeting and discuss how we're gonna move forward. And then move forward.
Isn't it going to be more productive if you have something to react to?
No, I don't
No,
think so.
no, we need to have a meeting to decide what it is we're gonna do to react to.
All right, then we will change the agenda for the 9th to have that discussion.
I think that would be perfect.
What if, just an idea, I don't know if this is allowed. Is it allowed for like a small committee to be formed,
Yes.
collect feedback? These meetings are hard, right? For everyone to put input and actually take it constructively. But in a small committee be formed to collect feedback from each board member about the direction of the housing authority and kind of what everyone wants to see, and then that's presented at a board meeting. So that everyone's.
The housing authority certainly can form board subcommittees on any issue.
And then it becomes a public meeting.
Right, but then it becomes but that way, just an idea, like, that way everyone's voice in here is heard, and it's kind of, instead of us having a public meeting where we're all just opinionating, it's actually like, hey, majority of the board, based on this review, believes in this direction or that.
I like that idea.
I think we
All
do
right.
need to, if we, I like the stuff, I think that's a good idea too. I think we also need to be thoughtful that we're all, making sure we're sharing our cumulative, our thoughts, our critical thinking. So it's not just a case where, someone expresses an opinion and the rest of the board doesn't hear it. Like our best decisions are when it's a group, when it's a critical thinking and we're all sharing ideas. But I think that's one of the challenges with where we got to this place, is there were little sub meetings and not at different people at different meetings with Kathy regarding this. And we all don't know whatever was said in those meetings. So I think that sort of brought us to the lack of efficiency we're feeling right now. So I think we just need to make sure that that information is both within the board and publicly shared. But it's important that what we're discussing are public meetings and the public hears.
Is there anybody who would not want to participate in a public process? So I guess what I'm saying, Scott, is you're going to have another board meeting.
Yeah, I know it's, yeah, and so if it's not a good idea, it's fine, it's just,
I mean,
I'm just trying to collect thoughts together.
understand.
Like collectively, so that when we come into this, we're like, boom, we throw up a silly PowerPoint, but at least it's like, hey, the majority of the board thinks that this is what we should be doing, and this is the type of,
All
One
right.
of the discussion topics that we had scheduled, I can't remember, if it was for the 9th meeting or long after, was discussion of the board organization and how we want to go about doing things. Driving force behind the transition plan is, was it running out of daylight in terms of doing things? So, from that standpoint, it's going to be a long time before we have a new executive director on board. So we're going to have an interim executive director. What are we doing in terms of the search? That's going to be months, at least. And there are a lot of tasks associated with that. And so from that standpoint, I still suggest I'll send the transition plan out, review it, don't review it, provide input, big picture, little picture. I don't think it matters from that standpoint, as long as there's input.
Dan, you have your hand up.
Yeah, I mean, my comment was mostly about the previous topic. So to Scott's point, I think it would be very effective to use small committees for work like we've been talking about. And to Catherine's point, I think that yes, that has kind of tripped us up in the past, but I think the difference is transparency, right? The difference is planning that out and being super vocal about how we're going about this instead of having, meetings among board members that are not as, visible and known about by the rest of the board. So I would be all for, creating a committee to help kind of define these search terms. And to Lou's point there, about, about the transition plan, I would, I'm wondering if there's been any thought among the group about bringing on the consultants that we used to help with with the board retreat. I know they mentioned that they've helped with executive searches in the past, and I think that given the kind of the same concern, right, just overall board bandwidth, and I think it might be useful to bring on them or somebody like them to help with this process.
Well, we did get a proposal. This is way more than board comment, but we did get a proposal from them just yesterday or the day before. It is to continue not to do the search, but rather 3 days of intense board work to reorganize this board. And it would be over probably several months. It's north of $30,000. And we have not had staff or Lou and myself look at this, but we think it's very expensive and it may need to be pared down. And we would like that opportunity to do that and bring it back to you. But it was not a proposal to do an executive search.
But Kathy, I think that just stems back to what Michael was saying, is that we're getting this proposal before we had the high level definition of what we wanted. And that's why I'm thinking that we really need to have this high level discussion of just the foul lines, the parameters of what we want to do as part of this transition, how we want the search to look, because we got this proposal, but who gave them the parameters of what we wanted? Did they just?
This is not a transition proposal.
This is just the board, okay.
This is what they committed for at the follow-up for our retreat. Next steps. So, I mean, if you're gonna spend that kind of money, you need to do extensive search of companies that specialize in this. And that will take time. It's an RFP.
Yeah, I think the April 9th meeting hopefully will go a long way. We'll talk about the survey results, what our consultant talked about at the meeting, and how we want to deal with some of the issues that have arisen from all of the surveys that we've taken in the last 3 months. So we will touch on how we got here. It will touch on, these are the results of the surveys that we've taken. These are things that, that's what the 9th is for. I would have liked to done that today, but we've had a board meeting every week now.
All right. Any other board member comment?
I have a comment.
I have
Unrelated, so.
All right, go ahead.
I mean, I guess kind of unrelated. Just I want to take a moment before we get into the business of today to just say something that I want to acknowledge out loud and direct it at Jason. So this organization would not be what it is without you. The work you have done, the partnerships you've built, the families who have a home. Because of your vision and your persistence, that legacy will last on. And I have watched you show up for this community in ways that have gone far and beyond a job description. And that matters to me personally. And I know it matters to the people whose lives are different because the Housing Authority exists and thrives the way it does under your leadership. So whatever path we take from here, I want you to know that my respect and gratitude for you are immensely genuine.
I'll say thank you.
Appreciate that.
My one comment is a reminder that next Wednesday, April 1st, is an open house at the Cottonwoods. And we have, Robin specifically asked me to remind the board, this is an opportunity to see the units. We have had some people respond, we've had other people, it's just not convenient. It's from 12 to 1:30. The city council has been invited as well as the county commissioners. And I'm gonna steal thunder, if you don't mind, and say, as of 4 o'clock yesterday, we received the temporary certificate of occupancy on building 2, which is the first building delivered. So good job to the Hotwoods team. And I hope to see you all next Wednesday.
Don't forget boots,
Sorry?
boots.
Boots?
She required you wear boots.
Yes. And a hard hat, John.
No more hard hat.
No more
No more
hard.
hard. Okay, all right.
Yeah. Boots and
Okay.
hard hats aside, a lot of the credit for getting to this milestone rests with Elliot and Mark and George. The amount of time that they have put into getting this to this state. I don't think any of you can even fathom. It's taken a huge amount of effort, and we all owe them a huge debt of gratitude.
All right, any final board member comments? All right, then we will move to our consent agenda. The consent agenda is 3 weeks worth of minutes. The January and February write-offs, which were none. The check register, financial statements from January, the February check register, and the February financial statements. So I believe that there's one small change in the attendance portion of the minutes for the last meeting, and I think Scott,
Which meeting is the last one? Is it the last one that's on here or the last one that we had?
the March 12th.
March 12th, okay.
And I think, Scott, you are not listed as being present, and I know you've been present at. Yeah, well, we just want to correct it.
Yeah, no, I can
Because
easily
it
collect it.
was
I just,
Cole and Dan that were not here.
Cole and Dan were not there. I may have switched those. I may have it at the wrong meeting.
Yes, yes.
Okay.
Okay, other than that,
So Dan and Cole absent.
are there any other comments or questions on anything on the consent agenda? Seeing none, I'll entertain a motion to accept as amended. Do I have a motion?
I'll move to approve with the amendment.
We have a motion by Angelica and a second by Lou. Any further discussion on the motion? If not, I'll call the question. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed. Steve and Dan, are you ayes?
Aye.
Thank you. All right, motion carries unanimously. Now the next thing is staff reports. Jason.
In the sake of time, nothing to add.
All right, Elliot.
Yeah, I don't really have the only thing I'll say is that we were doing our final building inspection on building 1 today. So we anticipate getting TCO for building 1 probably Monday. So is what I got from today's update on OEC. So that's the only thing I have.
Great. All right. The next item is an action item, resolution 2026-05, approving application to the Department of Housing, Proposition 123 down payment assistance grant. We'd like to, all right.
So this is essentially requesting your authorization to submit a grant. The grant is for $500,000 plus administrative costs. And so that's another 10%, something along those lines. The actual details are in the communication form. We're applying for this partly because of Cottonwoods. If you guys remember, we got a Prop 123 down payment assistance program grant that covers quite a bit of the use of down payment assistance that we expect for cottonwoods. This would replenish that supply for future uses. So this is not intended to be a source for buyers. We already have money set aside for that. But this would essentially replenish the pot so that we have the ability to support homeownership after cottonwoods.
Are there any other questions?
I just want to say thank you to Jason and Emily and Elizabeth for taking the lead on this, because this is important to be proactive to make sure our community has an opportunity. So well done and thank you as always.
Yeah, I deserve zero credit for this.
All right, any other questions? If not, I will entertain a motion to approve the resolution.
I will move to approve resolution 2026-005.
Okay. I have a motion by Catherine and a second by Maddie. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries unanimously. All right, Sandy, I know we're a little early. Do you wanna?
Is Lillian on? I'm not on Zoom. Can anyone tell if Lillian's on there?
See a sheet. I don't see the
She
sheet.
said she couldn't be on there till 1. Sorry, she has a sick child this morning. She said she could do it at 1 or at later. So I think we have to look something.
Okay, then we will roll to the next item. And that is review and approval of the mutual separation agreement between the Yampa Valley Housing Authority and Jason K. Peasley. This is scheduled for 60 minutes. So what's the board's pleasure? Shall we start this and finish it and then go into the audited financials?
I'm wondering if we should just skip to the discussion item on the Brown Ranch Steering Committee, and we can knock that out of the park and then go into the audit and then go into, because we only have 15 minutes before 1 o'clock. So we could have the Brown Ranch Steering Committee discussion and then go into the audit.
That works for, is that all right with everybody? All right. So who is going to lead that?
I was just going to introduce just the whole point of this conversation is there's kind of 3 pieces to it. A, what the hell is going on? B, who are our representatives on that? And then C, what's the sort of delegated authority that those representatives have? So, I will try to do my best to describe what's happening. Dave, you were there, Alec was there, Kathy Lou, I believe this is going to be a collaborative partnership focused on what is now called the Slate Creek neighborhood. Potentially trademarked. We need to double check that. Not trademarked. Good. And the point being is that we're going to be working towards what they've described, or what we've sort of begun discussing, is an end state that is a feasible project that includes housing for our community. It's a mix of uses, and
Increasing affordability.
increases affordability for the community, and is community supported.
Yes.
And so there's a lot in that. But fundamentally, this group, which is made up of 3 city members, 2 council members, 1 staff, 3 housing authority members, 2 board members, 1 staff, and 2 county members, 1 staff, 1 county commissioner, will be essentially in charge of developing extreme consensus around what that end state is. That will involve understanding capacity constraints. That will involve creating priorities for what we want to accomplish there. Is it like all affordable housing? Is it a mix of uses? A lot to be discussed there. The group of 8 are effectively responsible for bringing forward these slate of options for the community to digest and to direct community engagement around that. And so as it currently sits, we're still building this plane as we're flying it. But what we know to be certain is that there are 3 members of the city, 3 members of the housing authority, and 2 members of the county. And so it's important to talk about our membership there. One thing that's known is that I'm not going to be part of that. And the second is a discussion about like, what parameters do you want to give to this group for working on behalf of the Housing Authority Board? And that's not a conversation that we're going to finish today, but I wanted to just sort of get that out there because we had a conversation today about more or less each of the organizations needs to have this conversation. What are you allowed to agree to? What are you allowed to say, hey, this is where we're kind of headed? What comes back to the parent organization? How do you get that information? All very much needs to be worked out. So I think that right now, the fundamental questions are who from the Housing Authority. And then, this is one of the last few times we talked about this. I had mentioned, do we want to even play ball? I don't know how many people want to fistified that. Those of you that know what that is, probably throwing up in your mouth. But it's this consensus building thing, I think that's a question we're probably not capable of answering yet. So there's tons of information. If you ask, and Catherine, I expect you to ask a lot of detailed questions, the answers are going to be, I don't know. We're trying to figure that out. But I think the big question today is representation.
How about time constraint? That might.
Like, how much time is it going to take? Yeah, that's a great, thank you, John. I appreciate that question because how long was our meeting today? 4 hours?
Yeah.
3 hours?
For 3. It was 3 hours today, and our next meeting is April 30th and May 1st, back-to-back days, each day being 4 hours. And the plan is to meet monthly in that capacity to try and do like 2 days a month where the consultants come up, they spend the night here, we hammer out things like in large chunks. So I would say probably 8 hours a month, but crammed into 2 days is the thought process behind how often the group will meet and time constraints. That's not to say there won't be like engagement outside of those. That's when this group is physically meeting. I think as this process unfolds, and to Jason's point, today's meeting was very setting up what our ends are and how we, potentially what we need to do to reach those ends. We're very up in the sky still with that strategy. But part of that is community engagement. So certainly there will be a community engagement aspect piece. And but I think Jason is correct in that I think today what the Housing Authority Board should do is select the 2 representatives and who will be, at least the 2 board members who will be representing the Housing Authority on that committee, and then potentially schedule a conversation of what their foul lines are, what their boundaries are moving forward. There will be some decisions that I think are pretty straightforward, like you have the authority to engage in this or this, but I'm just thinking of the commissioners, like any big financial decision I'll need to bring to the BCC, right? Anything that requires any sort of like investment in that way would need to be brought back. So I feel like we need to kind of have those same conversations here of what that would look like, but board representation, I think, is key today. That way they have whoever is appointed. If it's not the same people, maybe it is, maybe it isn't, but I think for everyone to have a voice, as we've talked about, process.
How soon, what's the timeline that the agendas and packets come out before these meetings?
City council had some comments on that today, and we were all in consensus that the earlier we can get out the agendas, the better. And preferably if we could get out the agenda before the city council meeting, so that council members, because they don't meet weekly, so they would like a chance to review the agenda with council. And if council has questions, they can say, hey, can you ask this in the meeting? So there was commitment from the consultants today to really make sure that the agendas are out at an appropriate time, so that council has time to do that, and that once the agenda is out, it's not changing. So I would say at minimum a week, but maybe even sooner, so that if council doesn't have, like if we're meeting on Friday, the agenda shouldn't come out on, Monday. It should come out at least the Friday before.
Because I was going to suggest too, just as a process, that if agendas are out in time to get to all the parent organizations, just so if there were comments people, like our board member or other people had, we could send them to staff and staff could share with the.
Right, and that was part of the conversation was today, especially brought up by the city, that they wanted to be able to review that with their groups in advance.
And I think that there needs to be an acknowledgement of the fact that like this board doesn't meet weekly. Right. So for that to work for the city, that's fine. It may not provide the same opportunity for us. So the question then becomes, in addition to the delegated authorities, how are we communicating in the interim about it? And that's better to figure out beforehand than to say, oh, we didn't like it when we were doing that halfway through the process. And so that should, I think, be a topic of the discussion about the delegated authority and about when and which information is communicated up and down. Again, I think, as Michael had mentioned, this sort of works for literally anything, right? Like if we want to create a committee to like select the paint color for a front door, like there should be the same structure. This is obviously way more high stakes than like we think it should be blue versus green, but like I think this is a good opportunity to exercise those muscles, this kind of new tools that came out of the retreat.
Is there a projected timeline for when a consensus will be made out of this committee to then move forward to the next step?
Is infinity an answer?
We asked that today. Today and it's all recorded in public, but that was something that was asked today is like, we had this timeline of if everything goes perfectly, we would do this. And then we put scenarios out and then we would have a vote and then we would have implementation and then we get to something, right? And one of the questions I think Council Member Gary asked was, when is the vote? Do we want to put a date on this? And the group was like, yes, but we can't answer that today. So I think we're working towards that, Scott, but we don't have that yet. I think that needs to be discussed because I would love to see us actually put hard timelines on the work that we're doing. Right now, I think we're outlining the work that needs to be done, but we don't have those timelines yet.
Yeah, and I'm not sure that their scope of work covers all of those activities. The scope of work they have now is almost strictly related to governance. And so that originally was supposed to end, I think, in August. In terms of what we talked about today, I don't think any of that is actually in their scope of work.
Yes, John.
During this collaboration group, there may be items, information that we do not have available. We'll be allowed to use experts and resources outside the board so we can clarify the decision that we don't have the information for, or it will be opinions rather than facts.
Yes, I think the thought process is we would rely on experts.
Yeah, there's the desire is to have an advisory committee for different subjects that, would reach out The biggest one that I am concerned about is communications and community involvement. And I think today, I've got very little comfort that we've got a good handle on it.
You would also have technical.
Right.
Engineering, financial.
I'm sure there's questions that we cannot resolve. So it's important to have that information, otherwise we're moving in some other direction. Great.
When this process is over with, no matter how long it takes, what will be the result of it? What are you, where are we gonna be at? Is it gonna be a full-on Brown Ranch plan, whatever it is? It's gonna be a presentation of this is what we think the Brown Ranch should be. And that's gonna go to an annexation vote, or is it something else?
I think we talked about not only going to creating a plan that would go to a vote, but also then an implementation plan that would go with following the vote. And the bulk of the questions, concerns, and issues were from today to a vote. There was not a lot of input from vote to breaking ground. So
Yeah, I'm not, still, I mean, but the goal is that you're gonna have a plan that.
a plan to take to the
that
voters.
says
Now, there's,
this many units, this layout,
Yes,
this.
yes,
yes.
So if you're gonna do that, so that is good to know. Are you suggesting you're gonna get that done for 800,000 or whatever that budget is?
Oh. That's what I said, the end deliverable here is not part of the scope that the group.
I'm just talking about the plan.
Yeah.
Getting to a point that you have a plan.
Answering your question, Mark, we had anticipated that for 800,000, we could explore scenarios, not have a full-fledged plan that's executable, but that we would be in a position.
No, not execute.
Yeah. But you would have a schematic design for what the proposal would be to the community, or several proposals to the community, and they pick their favorite one. That was work that we had done a couple of years ago to explore, or those were costs that we had explored a couple of years ago related to getting to that state, with some contractors that we had on for. That was, so we have, just so everybody knows, we have about $500,000 set aside from the county grant to help support that. We're not certain it'll cost 800, it could cost significantly more. I'm sure you're expecting it to. And so, again, some of that stuff is TBD. I do want to just sort of interrupt. Our auditor is on now, so if we want to hit timeout on this conversation, go to the audit. Or if you guys want to continue this, finish it up, then go to the audit. I just want to be respectful of the lady's time, and I just gotta say,
Say, get the audit over with and then come back.
I think this auditor has said she will be brief. And since we have a very straightforward, clean audit, I think hopefully the time will be, we can do this and then swiftly move back into the continuing the discussion on Slate Creek neighborhood. So, all right.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you for adjusting for me, and I appreciate it. My name's Lillian Marcioni. I've been on the audit 4 years now, and I've been with McMahon 10 years. I actually live in Silverthorne, and our office is in Avon. This is our board letter. Here we disclose If there's any issues or disagreements with management, we did not have any, and we also just disclose anything that is an estimate as opposed to just rote payable or receipt. So our estimates are discount rates for leases, accrued compensated absences, and capital assets. Those are all standard from the prior year. We can keep scrolling down on that document. A big one to note is that we didn't have any major adjustments from our audit. That's always something you want to see. It doesn't mean that will always happen, but the idea is your books are as close to the audit as possible when you see them, and that the audit doesn't change much. That is a good sign that your accounting is in good practice and your controls are in place. So that means also is a good sign of a clean audit. Here's the financials. Let's move down to, well, first the independent auditor's report. This is very standard, but it's an unmodified opinion. Keep going a little bit. Basically just says that we have performed enough procedures to make sure that there's no material misstatements in the financials. So this is the unmodified opinion. We keep going down to discussion analysis. This is a good overview of what happened with Yampa Valley Authority over the year. The biggest one that I think can be helpful is just the condensed version of the financials. So we can keep going to the balance sheet. Going a little more right there. So Yampa Valley has two types of activities. One is governmental and the other is business type. They both have different types of accounting that are involved with them, but the basic premise is business type activities are ones where you primarily expect exchange type revenues, which be rent or other type activities will cover the expenses in that fund without serious governmental subsidy. So there's not huge transfers from the general fund to cover the activity. There's kind of self-sustaining. Those activities are smaller for the authority, but still significant. Those get recorded on the fund level as full accrual. So their long-term assets and liabilities are also on the fund. The governmental activities, there's kind of two types of accounting, and we'll show that later. But this will show your overall long-term and your governmental activity. So the capital assets are included here, along with deferred inflows. That's actually just deferred property taxes from the next year. You mill your property tax for the next year, but you don't receive it until the next year. We record a receivable and say you haven't collected it yet, so it's a liability. Net investment in capital assets, the net position. This is a good line to see if you're thinking about your fund balance. That really represents how much of your equity is actually just wrapped up in the asset of your capital assets, less any related liability. So if you took out debt to purchase capital assets, that would reduce what you actually have in realizable capital assets. So as you can see, restricted would mean that it's restricted by an outside party, usually debt related, and unrestricted is actually what you can spend of all of that position. So capital assets is wrapping up a majority of your net position. Any questions there? So let's go down to the income statement. Again, this is a very condensed version, and we'll show how these split out among functions. But program revenues, charges for services, so it just kind of splits out the detail on a very large level view. As you can see, business type doesn't have a lot of governmental funds or governmental activities, so it's having lower grants and is primarily charges for services. But your governmental activities is swapped. It is primarily a governmental function that functions on property tax and grants. And then the expenses, those are generally, and just by function, that's very high level. So let's go down to the government-wide financials, kind of the start of the financial statements. Going. Here you can see it broken out in great detail. of everything that's out. And these are all, again, the long-term activities. Go another 2 pages to the balance sheet of the governmental funds. Yeah, one more, go down. Yeah, C4, page C4. Or 3, sorry, yeah, there we go. Here you can see your governmentals by a fund governmental accounting basis. This view is really what the fund will collect in a short-term basis and what it pays out. It doesn't account for your capital assets. It really is a view of your governmental spending ability. So as you can see, these figures are different from what we showed on the governmental activities, which brings it all back in on the front pages. Here's what you really have in your general fund, your development fund, that is available for spending in the future without the cloudiness of depreciation from your fixed assets, et cetera. Let's move down to the business type. One more, yeah. Oh, one more. I'll keep going. Here's your business type. Again, so these are your separate functions and funds. And these are really what you're expecting to collect on that would pay for the fund itself and doesn't have as much government subsidy. Next, I want to show the notes kind of go into detail on everything that would be an asset or liability and how they're valued. But I would like to show some things in the budget to actual in the back. So we go all the way past the notes to the financials, probably about 20 or 30 pages. Almost there, I think we're close. Yep. So these will have budget to actuals of everything, of every fund. An important thing I would note is that it shows the original and final budget. The final budget is after any amendments you've had. This year, Yampa Valley Housing Authority did not have any amendments. It's not a bad thing to amend your budget, obviously, but it does show that they were adequately able to account for their budget without needs for major amendments all the time. So there was good forecasting. And then another thing that we like to see on this total expenditures line. So in the general fund, there was a budget of $1,043,473. The actual was $893,000. We want to see that lower because that's a state statute. So it's a violation of state budget law if you go over what you budget. So we didn't have any violations of budget law this year, which is another good thing. There's nothing else that I really want to highlight in the budget to actuals, but that, and then the very back, we do single audit every year. That is just a special audit of any of your federal programs. It's primarily a HUD loan program that we test annually, and we didn't have any compliance problems. We haven't in the past. So that's all clean there. Our audit usually takes about a week for field work, and we have around 3 staff. Our audit involves a balance sheet approach. So we look through all of your cash statements and verify your cash. We search future transactions to make sure everything's accrued. We look through all of your resolutions and any kind of agreements to make sure they're properly accounted for. So this takes us about a week to go through and comb through every balance sheet account and make sure they're properly reconciled. We also spend some time interviewing for internal controls. Yampa Valley has enough in its accounting team to properly implement internal controls and segregation of duties. So we didn't have any recommendations this year. I think overall your organization and your accounting team is very solid. And it's also evident because they can respond to our requests quickly. They know what we're talking about. There's no, oh, I don't know what this is, I need to research. So overall, I think your team's in really good shape. That's all I really have. Is there any questions or things that I could speak to more for the financials?
I just want to jump in and reiterate what Lillian said and thank Sandy and Mandy, because you guys did an extraordinary job, and this is not easy with all the moving pieces of a governmental accounting system. So just really appreciate your dedication and hard work and accuracy. And yes, I'll applaud. Good job.
Especially thank Mandy because she covered while I was gone for 3 weeks after we submitted everything. So she did the running around.
Yeah, and thank you, Jason, for putting together a good team, because, you know, when Jason first got on board, our financials did not have a positive fund balance. They were not this tightly reconciled, and it was with your leadership that got us here. So thank you.
All right, any other questions? All right.
You know, I'm gonna make just one other comment. I did attend a finance meeting because I do like looking at audits, and I had more detailed questions there, and I really appreciate Lily and your hard work. One friendly suggestion I made to the finance committee, and I recognize this as part of a larger discussion when we do our strategic plan, the goalposts and such. But the finance committee does receive financial statements from our LIHTC properties, our partnership properties, in addition to Sunlight, which is another partnership. And I know there's some issues on proprietary, but one thing I'd like to just put in everyone's mind moving forward is I do think it'd be beneficial to, on an annual basis, for the board to have just a high level meeting going over how are these investment properties doing? Just if we can see their financial statements. And I mean high level information, like what are their vacancy rates? Any other thing, because I really do feel we invested in these properties, and Elliot and Lala and the property management team working with the city have done a great job on moving forward on property management. But I do think since we invested in these, I do think it'd be wise for us to have a thoughtful, high level annual meeting just about these properties. So just to toss that out in everyone's mind, since I suggested it to the finance committee.
And I think the finance committee agreed, Cole, if I remember.
Yes.
As soon as we receive the year-end audited, for those properties that we get audited financials, there's one property we get management prepared.
Okay, so perfect, just to toss that out to everyone. And
Yeah,
thanks
and
again.
just following up on that, so I spoke to Matt Gillum and he's happy to provide us with some high level information on that. And they're in the process of like converting all their financial and software systems over to a new platform. That'll happen in the next 30, 45 days. And so he said as part of that, he can generate or have them input like a report that he can generate for us to share with the board and that information. So.
All right, thank you so much for doing that. I know with everything going on, you're swamped, so I felt guilty at the finance committee even asking that, but thanks for getting that information so quickly.
Yep.
And hopefully Baby Gorman and Sunlight has a similar opportunity, so.
All right, any other questions on the audit? Okay, we need to make a motion to accept the audit as proposed. So do I have a motion?
So
Second.
I have a motion by Cole and a second by Lou. Any further discussion on the motion? If not, I'll call the question. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Thank you, Sandy, Mandy, and the whole finance team. Thank you.
Thank you.
thank you, Leah.
Yep.
All right. Now we'll move back to the Brown Ranch / Slate Creek neighborhood. Where were we? We were just about ready to discuss representation.
Yeah. Jason?
Steve has.
Will this group have any outreach or mainly they working with themselves? Will they have any outreach?
Steve,
Steve,
can't
can you
hear
hear
Steve.
this?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yeah.
We can keep now.
I just wanted to say one thing about the Brown Ranch strategy for 2026, because it is one of our council goals. And our focus is really going to be on what we're calling right sizing, if you will, the first phase of an annexation to align with actual infrastructure, capacity constraints, and voter sentiment. So once these constraints and capacity restrictions are quantified, and we should have that information within the next couple weeks, the city staff is working on finalizing that right now. Once those are quantified, we can then develop, meaning this committee that we've been talking about, potential annexation scenarios for community feedback, which would be the next step after that. So just to simplify things, that capacity constraint analysis, which includes things like EQRs, the electric, the gas, roads, fire, police needs, all those kinds of things are going to be coming our way in the next couple weeks once that analysis is done. So I just wanted to kind of simplify things a little bit. Thank you.
Thanks, Steve.
Today that question was asked of Tom and he said end of April, most likely for that report to come out in the meeting.
That's fantastic. Because really, until we know the number, everything else is, I mean, what
Right.
comes grow, you know?
Right. And end of April's fine. I mean, that's what, 4 or 5 weeks from now. Yeah. I thought it was going to be closer to 3. But if that's what he said today, I will go by that.
All right, so let's move on to the current representation and future representation. As Jason mentioned, the 2 board members are myself and Lou. And Jason participated today as of right now. He's our executive director and participated fully in the meeting. I would just like to say I would like to continue. And the reason is I have been involved in Brown Ranch, Steamboat 700, West Steamboat neighborhood. And going back to, many of you don't know, I've spent a total of 15 years in 2 different terms on the planning commission and served as 5 years as the planning chair. I spent 6 years on the city council, during which time we heard the West Steamboat neighborhood and was involved in that from a process standpoint. Going back to 700 during the planning staff, I was involved in defining what's called the traditional neighborhood design. We spent almost 2 years in planning commission on developing basically a brand new zoning district. And this last go around, I served as one of our negotiators on the BRAC committee, recognizing there's a better way forward, and I'd like to apply those lessons learned. So I'm asking for a continuation, and I do have the time, and we've already put in, what, about 12 hours? Yeah. So, and I'm available on the next 8-hour meetings. So I would like your consideration to continue serving.
You know, Kathy, I really appreciate all your hard work you've done, you know, and your talents. I think, you know, as I said, House Authority, as a group, I'm sure, and the community appreciate you. I would just like to respectfully toss up the idea. I really think it's important on this committee. And on a side note, I just have to laugh at the Slate Creek name, because right after the original Brown Ranch election, Jason was geared up. You know, the first meeting we had, Jason was like, we need to downsize this, right size it. And he even suggested, let's call it Slate Creek neighborhood. So 2 years later, yay. But I think it's important we look at this with a fresh start. And I do really feel that even though, you know, the BRAC process obviously had its challenges, and I think it's important that we have new eyes on this and new energy just from the community's perspective and from the board perspective. We've got 4 great new board members. And I really think it's important that one of our, if it works for your schedules, I don't want to commit to people, but I think it's important we have a new board member on this. I mean, all four of you guys are amazing. And I also think that it's important, since this is looking at what is going to be the development plan or the pre-development plan. I think it's important we have that board development expertise. And so Lou is the chair of our development committee. So I was just looking at it from more talent base, and I was, you know, my friendly suggestion with all due respect is that it's Lou as our development chair. And then if one of the four new members have time, one of our new members. So that's my suggestion.
I mean, I'll add my background. I would like to stay on the committee. From a background standpoint, I have I've reviewed, commented on, and in many cases approved virtually every master plan the city has written since 2021. Some of it is part of the planning commission, just some of it because of my expertise. I am an expert in infrastructure. And that's going to be one of the constraining forces on anything we do. I've developed a water strategy, optimized the water system for the city, separate from YVHA, just to optimize the system, because that's probably going to be the most limited factor. I gave my last document to John Snyder last week, and I'm going to meet with him and Tom Leeson to figure out how much water we can get out of the existing system. So from that standpoint, and other infrastructure stuff is, I'm apparently now the soils guy, but roads as well.
Is there anyone else interested in serving on the committee? Any new board members interested, since that was thrown out there?
And I hate to tie you guys in the spot, but you guys are also amazing. I just want to make, and also it's important we do give opportunity for new voices. So Dan?
It's a barn burner.
Yeah. Scott?
Appreciate it. I'd love to, but I personally don't have the time. I do want to maybe say something about this though. I struggle, when it was first brought up, I struggle with the fact that there is not a community developer on this committee to move this forward. It's how, like, everyone is in this room because we have a housing crisis in Steamboat. And we need to move forward. And to me, this, without a housing developer, is just kicking the can another year. And I think everyone here, and Kathy and Lou, I know both of you are really well-intentioned too, and I think you can contribute to it. So this is not anything to that, but politicians do not develop housing, right? Planners, architects, engineers do not develop housing, like nowhere. And we don't have a community developer as a part of this committee. And so that's why, like, I will be voting nay on anything related to this committee, not anything personal to you being on it. I think we should be moving forward as a board to dig our heels in and say, we need an RFP, we need to select a human community developer, and we need a community developer at the seat. And while that feels like it could prolong the process, I firmly believe, based on pretty long tenure developing housing commercial projects, that in a year we're going to be sitting here with a really good plan with no one at the table to say they can execute it. And I think that's just a problem.
You define community developer?
Community developer, I'm looking at like housing developer, right? But someone that's developed like whole neighborhoods.
Okay, I didn't know if community meant local or just someone that has the expertise of larger scale developments versus.
Looking at like larger, yeah, 100%.
Community doesn't necessarily, I'm just trying to understand, doesn't necessarily mean local.
No.
Got it. Local to Steamboat.
No, I'm saying, hey, like.
Experienced with.
Look at what Breckenridge has done. Look at what Boulder has done. Look at what communities in Colorado have done. They bring in a developer to sit at the table that can take all that great advice and counsel from consultants and architects and the community, and they can help shape that plan. Because again, like everyone sitting here right now wants to provide housing. We're all volunteering our time. And the housing authority, all the staff is working really hard. It'd just be a really big shame, I think, in my opinion, to sit here in a year and a half and have a plan in place that no one can execute.
I have a comment real similar to that one, and that's there's nobody on this board that you're suggesting that has any real experience with developing, with creating, in essence, you're creating another small town. Maybe it's 100% housing. Maybe it's a mix of commercial. Maybe it's all affordable. Maybe it's market. Maybe there's a trailer park. But there's nobody on there that's done this. And so, and you don't necessarily have to have somebody, but you do have to have a list of real pros that you're going to bring in to help create this plan. And I guess maybe we had some before, but before was before. So we're going forward and doing this again. So I don't know who those people are. I have a couple of thoughts, but what is crucial is to have professionals help guide this committee in creating this community. The group that you're talking about isn't going to get this done. They can get it done with professional help. So, and I don't know that you're getting professional help in all the different phases for 800 grand. And if we're going around this next time, it needs to get done really right and really thought out. So I don't want to be in the committee, but I'd like the committee to be looking at who to get to help with this process. But if you don't have that, then there's really no sense moving forward. It ain't going to happen.
Today was my first meeting with this. I wasn't at the first two meetings, so I'm playing catch up, and it was a good meeting today. I'll echo, or I'll repeat that again, that I thought a lot of it was honing in and productive. And some of the questions that we asked today, we did this exercise where it was like, what are our milestones, what are our questions, and then what are our community engagement. And some of the questions were like, who are we partnering with? Like, what does this look like? And so I agree that we need to have some sort of, we need to have experts at the table, that we need to have a community developer at the table. And I think hopefully this group will get there, like those questions. And feel free to chime in who else was there, because there might have been discussions on this. I watched the 2 recordings of the first meeting, but I wasn't there in person. But those questions were asked of like, how are we going to fund this? Who are the experts we're going to rely on? Who are we going to hire to do the work? Like how, and so I agree with both of you. And I think my hope is that this board can have conversations like this to carry them forward to whoever the 2 representatives are, to then go to the group and say, we need a community developer on this committee, or we need this expert here, because I think that's this board's goal, is to have exactly this conversation and then carry that forward to the next meeting of, this is what our board thinks we need to be successful.
I had a question. It appears that people on the board need to have some experience, but they don't need to be experts. Is that my conclusion?
On this like steering committee?
Yes.
I think it's up to the Housing Authority Board of who they appoint. I would say you don't need, it's up to you. I think it's up to this group to decide. I think that there's value in new voices. I think that there's value in historical, like in longevity and that history. I think it's just up to us to have an open and honest conversation of who the representatives will be, and if we participate, to Scott's point, and how we participate and the things we want to carry forward. one of the things that I thought about was, again, going back to the board retreat, was there's a lot of things being done by the chair and the vice chair and executive committee. And do we then put the chair and the vice chair again on this one, or do we open it up to different people? Because I think that's, if this board is only appointing the chair and the vice chair, then we can't complain, like I read in the survey, if no one else is willing to step up and serve on those boards and committees. So I think that is something that I would just put out reading things, is like, hey, we have to make the change if we want to see the change. And that means people have to step up into these roles.
I think for clarifications, the PCT is a steering committee. It is not an implementation committee. And the whole idea is to collaborate across all the political entities involved to ensure that we can get a plan and that there are experts involved. And that's what it is. It's more of a management committee than an implementation committee.
Yes, John.
I'm after hearing this, I think I would like to throw my name into the hat. Didn't develop a resume right here, but I started affordable housing in 1980 when I bought my first house with my friend who co-signed my mortgage, and I was paying 70% of my income on my affordable house in Fairview. And after that, I put a stake in the ground, and this is my community, and we were connected by the soul. After that, I spent since 1980 working the best I can in all aspects to promote affordable housing and to retain the community and to make sure the friends that were leaving, I could retain them, because we've lost a huge legacy of folks who could make this place really different if they were here or if they were commuting. And then I actually attended the first Yampa Valley Housing Commission, 1993, after we did the master plan, where we had all kinds of suggestions of how to solve the housing problem that the community suggested. And these folks were made up of mostly astute bankers and real estate folks who knew what's going on. And they rejected all our suggestions by the community, and they said the market will always solve this problem. Well, here we are 45 years later or whatever, and the market hasn't. And after that, I joined Ralph with Kathy, and we did a number of things, but one thing we tried to do is do an excise tax, and we failed. And from that came the housing authority, which the three of us were on at that particular time, and it was pretty much a struggle. I think we hired Jason at $60,000 a year, which was whatever, it was pretty terrible. We were paying interest on our loan for the reserve because we couldn't afford to pay the loan. And we were in pretty dire states. And then a group, including Kathy and everybody, got together. We need a plan. We need to come out to the community and say, we're going to do this and we do this. So our 10-year plan was to get a 1 mil, and one group, Kathy was in that group, and she worked on affordable housing, and she worked on potential lots that we could do in town, like where Anglers Drive was, that were near transportation, we're near this and near that, which really made sense. And my responsibility was funding. So I reached out to about a dozen different staff all through Western Colorado and had a pretty interesting conversation about how they were doing, the ups and downs, the back and forth. And from that, I generated a profile of all those folks and all the income. In fact, I gave that to the housing, to the, I gave that to the, excuse me, I'm a little bit nervous talking. I gave that to the city council, showing what linkage and inclusionary zoning did, a whole dossier, and I've got all that information. And I asked them about 5 or 6 questions, and I actually got someone to come up and do presentations to the council. And I worked on linkage and inclusionary zoning for 4 or 5 years at the council, put it off. And so I've been pretty hard there in the trenches. I have a lot of technical experience, not to the level of most of these folks here, but I have a good feeling for the community. Diane and myself over the last 4 years have knocked on over 4,000 or 5,000 doors for the STR, for the STR 75%, and for the annexation. and for a few city council people who support affordable housing. And out of that 4,000 or 5,000 people, we probably had really good conversations with these 500 or 600 people. And they were in my echo chamber. They were from all aspects of the community. We were all over the community trying to do that. So we are really feeling not my echo chamber, but for what the community, the diverse community people feeling that. And so even though I have been on the housing authority for the last 7 years, I've been involved in supporting them and communicating and kind of a de facto housing authority person. And one of the reasons why I didn't get chose again was my advocacy for single family over multi. And so I was kind of a bad boy. No, Jason didn't like me for that. And I was kind of outspoken. And I realized that I probably had the wrong line because we tried to single family. It's so expensive, but you can't really meet the needs. So I've been kind of a convert to maybe somewhere in between. And then when I saw this coming up recently about a position, I saw what was going on with Noreen mentioned. I don't have to go over that, but I was really upset and angered about what happened with the housing authority, what was going on. I don't believe Jason's a problem. I don't believe the housing authority is a problem, even though they have some responsibility. One is moving too fast, but Jesus, you can see what we have to deal with. So that's why I wanted to get on board and contribute my past experience, some of my technical knowledge, my understanding of the housing staff for all of Western Colorado and what they were going up against. And I got good contacts there, and we can use them as if we have any problems about what's going on. Here's how they solve some of their problems. I know one size doesn't fit all. So I've been to most of the master plans and every community plan you can possibly think of. And so the heart and soul is here right here. And my brain's not bad. I got a degree in numerical analysis, computer science, and a master's degree in the geology, the hydrology, the meteorology, and the oceanography connection to the valley. So I got a vocational master's degree, so it's functional. So I'll just stop there.
All right, so there are 3 people who have put in their hat. Is there anybody else that would like to volunteer to be the board representatives on this steering committee, or whatever we're gonna call it, the Community Solutions Project? Yes.
Oh, no, go ahead, Michael.
Please, you got your hand up.
Oh, no, I was just gonna say, I'm also interested in, representing the board on the steering committee. Yeah, I've worked my way up through housing here in Steamboat. I've started in employee housing through the resort. I moved on to Yampa Valley Housing Authority apartment at Sunlight Crossing. And now my husband and I do own a home here in the valley. And we couldn't have done it without having the opportunity to live in a subsidized apartment. Previously, I worked in Washington, D.C. with campaign advocacy groups, and we relied heavily on technical experts to inform our decisions and be able to work closely with elected officials, which I think would transition pretty well into this role. And yeah, I think I also work as a case manager here at the Health Partnership in Steamboat. So I work pretty closely with marginalized populations, and I guess have a pretty good understanding of what affordable housing looks like for folks here in the valley, and what increased access can do for people and how it can really change lives. So I'd like to be part of that.
Okay, thank you, Shannon.
Can I ask a question?
Yes.
Something that would help me and when we raise this question to a vote is back to Jason's when he was setting this up about what is the process for the representatives going to represent the collective perspective of the board, and what are the guardrails of what authority do they have to represent the guardrails that the board gives them. I know we probably won't talk about that today, but that was probably with the way that BRAC was set up, that was probably one of the key reasons where things went sideways, was the pace and the lack of time to go back and forth between the BRAC representatives and the board. Sounds like there's acknowledgement that didn't work well last time, so all efforts will be made to not do that again. But I guess all of the names that are on the floor bring very different perspectives and very different backgrounds. And I feel like without having that further defined, it would be really hard for me to choose between the three. Four.
John, Shannon, Lou, and myself.
Sorry, four. Just didn't count correctly. Does anyone else share that? Does that make sense what I'm raising? That if we haven't defined the process for when they will come back versus when they will lean on their own expertise or their own perspectives, I do have some concerns about how that would work.
Well, I'll answer for me. I think communication's absolutely important and critical. We last time were empowered by the board to make what I think were reasonable advances. And when there were mileposts, we would bring things back to the full board. And I think that would be something that I would embrace. I think it's going to be imperative to understand what the other guardrails of the other two organizations have, because if we're not all aligned, as far as if some, and I'll use the city last time, had two negotiators and they would go into executive session and we would not know what the individual positions of different city council members were. It was very difficult to be negotiating or even discussing moving forward without knowing what everybody were aligned and given direction by their respective boards. So I think, to me, we need all three of us to be on the same page. Not the same page, the same process.
But I'm asking about the individual the two individuals that would end up representing the housing authority. How would you balance your designation to represent the board as a whole and the guardrails that the board as a whole sets? How would you and I don't know that you have to answer that as an individual or today, but we haven't set those guardrails.
No.
And I have some calls about naming a representative short of setting what those guardrails are.
You know, Michael, and it's interesting because we were right. One of the biggest challenges with the RAP process is we just didn't know what was going on in those meetings. I mean, we did not have information. I mean, Commissioner Corrigan and I went to, we read the minutes and read the reports and stuff, and we went to a meeting in August and both of us left saying we should just time out and stop. It was, the information flow was not good. And I'm not really that crazy about the information flow we've been receiving from the 2 or 3 meetings we've had so far on this PCT. I mean, I think it's one of the also challenges we had in the DST, great group of people, hard work, and I appreciate it. But the summary reports from those DST meetings versus what you heard from people who were there were were very, different. But I do wonder, as part of what the process of, with how many meetings have we had in the PCT right now? 2, 3? So we've had 3 meetings.
Today was the third.
Yeah, so we have 3 meetings and we as a board are not clear what's even happening in those. So I think whoever we appoint moving forward has to, work with the team to work with the steering committee, Slate Creek, whatever, to come up with an information flow that we, all 3 peer organizations, are both having information on our guardrails and coming back. But the next meeting, Jason, is when?
April 30th. I guess, sorry, to be more specific, is with the RAC process, I actually sort of it got unruly once it was really in the thick of it, but at the very beginning, a schedule was set, list of topics per meeting was set. I actually found that to be pretty well defined in terms of which issues were going to be tackled first. At the very beginning, I listened live to every recording, so you could always listen in. At these meetings that are occurring now are recorded. You know, it depends on how much time you have, if you can watch that versus reading a summary. So I don't know that I have super strong opinion about that piece, but it sounds like, and those of you that are closest to it, please correct me if I'm wrong. The list of topics for the PCT right now is not about water or open space or parks and rec. It is about community engagement. What are the methods of how we would develop this property that are on the table for consideration? Product types, affordability tools, phasing, number of units. Like it's less, it's not technical in the same way as the BRAC process was, because going into the BRAC process, there was already a plan for Brown Ranch that informed the issues that were discussed at the BRAC level. This is one step above that, which I think is I personally think is the right way to start. But because those issues are a little more subjective in nature, that's why I'm kind of digging into the perspectives of those who have thrown their name into the ring. And how, like, I'm just going to give a volatile example just to really get my point out there. This does not reflect my personal opinion. I'm just using it to paint a picture. If one of the tools is to have a portion of the development be market rate so that it can heavily subsidize the affordable units, we need as a board to come up with the guardrails for the two representatives of where that is okay and where it is absolutely off limits, if at all. We haven't had that discussion yet. So if we haven't had the discussion and we designate two representatives today, and we haven't given that person direction, and these are the next set of topics that are going to be discussed as it relates to coming up with different plans, how do we know that that person is representing our collective opinion versus their own?
Can I make a comment on that? Tell me.
No, I was just gonna say to Michael's point that I think no matter who we appoint, like we could appoint someone who has incredible development experience or experience with XYZ. I think the guardrails are the same. Even if you are an expert in this, you still have to come back to the board for these large decisions. So I think it doesn't matter who we appoint. Like obviously everyone has different everyone has different skill sets. But to me, you still have the same guardrails, even if you're like, well, I'm the expert in this. This is my everyday job. I know what's best. I don't think that's okay. I think it doesn't matter what you're an expert in. You come back to the full board for that consensus.
Expert or your past
or your past experience or your person. Exactly. I would say it doesn't matter what your lived experience, your personal experience, your skill set is. We set the guidelines, and even if you feel like, quote unquote, to be you know better, you come back to the board.
You know better, or if you just simply personally can't support that particular thing, but if the board has directed you to,
then you support it. Yes, I think that is the way we move forward, because then it doesn't actually matter what person we put in there. They're not representing Angelica Salinas on the board. They are representing the Yampa Valley Housing Authority, and if consensus is this, they will go to that meeting with that consensus.
I think a lot of what you're talking about is simple communication pathways. And these are complex pathways. Not tomorrow, I guess Friday, maybe that's tomorrow. We're supposed to get the summary of the meeting. I have no idea what it'll look like. But what I can tell you is a week ago, 2 weeks ago, we got the agenda for today's meeting. And then 3 days ago, we got the agenda for today's meeting, which is totally different. So the communication pathways will fuzzy for the most part. And I think what you're looking for is some interpretation of what the summary notes that are going to be provided by these consultants and whether or not those represent what's happening out there. And the insight in terms of, what is the real issue here? You brought up mixed use. That was a big word today. And then we talked about what mixed use meant. And everybody has a different idea, but it's mixed use. That seems to be a term that was acceptable to elaborate, whatever you want to call it, the steering committee. And so that means we're going to talk about things like commercial property. We're going to talk about industrials. We're going to talk about market price homes. And how does that fit into what we as the authority want to do? What a restricted grant tells us we can do in terms of development. And that's, again, it's all, our communications may be different than what the city is going to communicate. It's going to be different than what the county is going to communicate.
Yeah, I'm not, I mean, I care, but the topic for the point of this conversation, what the city and the county decide to do is feel separate. It obviously needs to fit into the process, but yeah, I just, we need to set, like, let's use the watercolor example. The direction was each glass needs a different color and one of them has to be green. If that's the guardrails that we set for the 4 people, I want to make sure that, but how you get there is, well, probably needs to be a little more defined than it was in that exercise, given the stakes of this endeavor. But like, I just want to make sure that whoever, that's a shared goal that they're representing, because we're supporting one person or another based upon their past experience and their ability to know their role as a board representative, but also be able to be effective in the group. And it just feels a little precarious to me personally to pick my choice today without having those guardrails defined.
Just a point of clarification, this decision doesn't need to be made today. There is at least one more board meeting between now and next meeting.
April 9th. One more YVHA meeting, yeah.
It's so it's a threshold item to have the conversation about guardrails and foul poles and you know, what's inside the lines and what's outside the lines, or other mixed metaphors we could utilize. That could happen at a future meeting before we make this decision.
I would just say that I would like, for me, to that point, I would like to define those guardrails a little bit better. And then based on what guardrails are determined by the board, that would help me make my selection of who I would recommend based upon those guardrails.
It seems like, I don't know about Shannon, but we just kind of did this off the top of our heads a little bit. Nothing planned, this is spontaneous for me, possibly. So you didn't get probably our profile of us. If we gave you our resume that we applied to the board, it may give you a better idea of who we are and where we come from, possibly.
So I guess what that's nice. Can we add an agenda item to April 9th? That's our next board meeting.
Yeah.
That is defining the guardrails and then selecting the representatives.
Yes, we can do that.
Okay.
And it sounds like we need an updated list of deliverables that you guys have talked about out of this. Cause like everything you talked about that you met about does not match these activities.
It's gone far off of the script.
Yeah, I don't even know what you guys were sending me in to approve.
Yeah, and I think we haven't like made any votes or decisions. Well, to the husband. But besides deciding who's on the group, but I think that whenever the summary of today's meeting comes out, which we were promised we would get that tomorrow, then the whole board, we should forward that to the whole board.
Appreciate it. And also just, I mentioned this, just another thought on this is if there's some way there's even transcripts or more detailed minutes of these meetings. I think a lot of us are saying we don't have 4 hours to watch meetings we're not participating in. And the summaries, just based on past history, are not complete, or they have. And so if there's a way that there can be a transcript, even if it's AI or something, that there's more detailed minutes. And whoever's on the committee, I think we need to have, you know, I know Lou's done a really good job this past on DST of sharing more information than the summaries are. but just having that information flow coming to the board so we can be part of the group. And also John brought up a good point. I mean, for those of you, that's one of the reasons I brought up a new board member on this committee is I saw the resumes like Shannon, John, Scott, and Dan put in. And I was like, oh my gosh, this is like the best new 4 board members ever. I mean, you guys are not just flattering you, but even maybe since we're, maybe send a copy of, Shannon and John's application, since all the current board members know each other, but, share that information if you're applying, so.
Well, on that note, Dan has his hand up, so let's
Maybe
hear
Dan
from
wants to do
you.
it too.
Yeah, well, thank you, Catherine. And as interested as I would be, I really don't think I have the bandwidth to take on something like that right now. But to Michael Ann's point, I agree with the sentiment that yes, we want to have defined guardrails, but I think it's really tough to kind of what I would ask you, Michael Ann, is, what would be, if it were up to you, how would you define the guardrails for these people in this role, just to give us something to kind of base the conversation around? And I know we're kind of putting you on the spot, but maybe we can use that to kind of shape the conversation as we bring it into the next meeting on the 9th.
I'd have to think about that more.
I just like to throw out there from the aspect, not as a board member here, but there's 8 people sitting in the room and we are coming to consensus on certain little things. This is still really early out in the process. I know everybody wants to get all the details of what's happening, but we're not even sure of all the details that are happening. But I feel like it's off to a better start than it was the first meeting of the 3, where we weren't really sure. I agree to your point that there needs to be a high-level developer as we get into the process more. I think it still needs a little bit of time just to play out. And this is coming from somebody who's not used to this process taking so long.
This is a lot of process. That's what we've been doing, talking about the process of making a decision. That's predominantly what this has all been about. I think there may be a transition taking place because several people have expressed frustration at the pace at which we were going. And we need something more solid to come out of this. Now, whether or not what we did today, where we listed out this timeline and end results, actually achieves that, I'm not sure.
And I think it's all just getting us into the process so that we can later define a timeline. I don't think we were defining a timeline today. At least that's not the way.
Just a point of clarification, are you the voting member today or Steve Muntean? Okay. All right, so we are going to add an agenda item for the April 9th meeting to further discuss guardrails and also to further talk about who will represent us at the April 30th, May 1 meetings. Okay. Is that all right with everyone? All right, well then we will move on. And the next item is a discussion of the mutual separation agreement with Jason and
We are.
yeah, we are.
All right, let's do
We're
it.
ready. George, George,
I'm gonna step out for this.
Jason has asked that he's gonna step out.
Okay then.
Okay. All right, George.
So as you all saw on Tuesday, I believe, based on last week's board meeting, I made some revisions to the proposed mutual separation agreement. Tried to get what you all wanted in there. You also saw below my email, Jason's attorney's response to that. That's all I really have to present. Questions, comments, discussion, deliberation, please.
I mean, the only comment I'll make, I think we need to bring this to closure somehow. I think this has gone on too long now, personally. I think the going back and forth with Jason's attorney, first, his insinuation that Kathy misled anybody about the health benefits, I found personally offensive.
I corrected him on that. I did not include those emails with you all.
Okay.
And
I'm glad, because
and his response to me was even more offensive.
Okay, which only gets my back up more. I mean, I sent you my thoughts. The whole attorney, we pay for your attorney, you pay for our attorney, probability of either one of us suing anybody, I think is pretty low. So I'm totally not concerned about it. Well, I am concerned about it, but not much. But in terms of the health benefits, I think what the benefits that Jason is getting now are the base benefits he should get going forward, not anything extra. And so, I mean, if we make the attorney thing go away and they take the dollar reduction, I'm fine with the way it is now.
Okay, so can you just repeat that again? The attorney?
There's the prevailing, whoever, if we sue them, and we win, they have to pay our attorney fees.
No, I understand what it says. I was just asking you to restate your.
Take that paragraph out, whatever section it is.
So it would be silent?
It'll be silent, because we can sue them anyway. Not that we would, I mean, we can sue them anyway.
Yeah, that has nothing to do with the ability to sue.
It's recovering the money.
Recovering.
That's all, that's what it's about. And if the probability of a litigation taking place is low, and I don't see it happening.
The flip side could just still be said about the probability is low, and why the aversion to keeping it in.
No, I'm not gonna argue for that. I think it's kind of stupid, to tell you the truth. But why they want to pick on this, I don't know. And like I said, the way Mr. Stein painted his picture, I did not appreciate at all.
Curious, like just asking the board, I mean, George in his last email to us sort of gave his opinion and has given his opinion throughout this process, asking or advising us about provisions and their rationale based on what is best for the organization, what protects us best, which is what our responsibility is. Does anyone, I guess I'm just curious how everyone is feeling about the current state of the negotiations. I agree with Lou, it's definitely time to wrap this up. It's certainly gotten a little messier and a lot more contentious than I would have liked to see it. But it does feel like we're now being forced to choose between provisions that protect the organization and the spirit of mutual separation. And it's super unfortunate, but I guess I'm just curious if where the rest of the board sits on.
Let me comment. For those of us that sent comments to George, we sent them to George, but with instructions not to copy anybody else, so nobody else knows
What everybody says.
who sent what recommendations in. So here's my recommendation.
Yeah, and that, just to clarify, that's to open meeting thing.
Yeah, no, I understand why, but just as a matter of fact, nobody knows who sent and what they said. So what I said was really what I said in the meeting. One was a discussion of what is the cost of the settlement with Jason, that Scott brought up and I brought up last time. And so I would like to see, I wanted to see the total cost, not the difference between the existing contractual agreement that we've got, or that we could have where he was terminated without cause. I didn't want to see the difference between that and what we're doing today. I just wanted to see, just as a matter of record, what is the total cost? In response to Stein's comment about having it in the body of the document, I don't care if it's in the body of the document, but I want it in the document so it could be an exhibit. But I personally would like to see it in there just as a matter of public record.
And I'll respond to that. So there was a spreadsheet included with my email that Sandy graciously prepared. For the record, the total cost estimate, because taxes are a little funky, are 128,000 and change for the severance.
Well, I would add the coaching to that.
And the vacation.
I would not add the vacation because that's our policy to any employee that's leaving. He's already accrued that time. It's his.
So that's included in the wages number?
No.
Or is that included in the 128 then?
I wrote the vacation maximum payout at the bottom, 9,437, but I would not include that in the total cost of severance. I would include 6 months wages, the health benefits, the 6% retirement match, the of FICA and state unemployment, and the value of his coaching. The total is 134,386.
I got what you're saying.
Say that again. Say the close number again.
134,386.
I got to. The PTO is already earned and accrued.
I get that, but it's from a cash perspective, it's 143,823, but your 130 number is what we are paying above and beyond employment.
Correct.
Thank you.
134,000 and change.
So I would just like to see that. An exhibit is fine. And then I would like to see the I forgot what you call the clause, but the
attorney fee provision.
Thank you.
Prevailing.
Yeah, the prevailing. I'd like to see that. And I forgot to give you one other point.
There's also the issue of the healthcare.
Oh, the healthcare. I got. I'm a little ambivalent about that. On the one hand, if he wasn't getting that healthcare, then for him to ask for more than he is getting today is a bit of a push, but I mean, it's, what was the difference? Like $6,000, $4,000? I'm not gonna get in a tither about it. If that would make everything easier to deal with, then fine. And if you thought there was a representation that you said that, then I'm fine with it. I doubt that you specifically knew, or you probably just were having a general conversation. So
We were having a
I'm
conversation about coverage, not dollars.
Yeah, so I'm ambivalent about that one.
Steve has.
It's okay either way. The key things are the having the settlement in the document as an exhibit, and then
The numbers you need.
prevailing attorney's fees.
Hey, George, this is Steve. Can I ask you a quick question?
Sure.
The total cost of the severance package at 6 months was what again? You broke up a little bit when you were talking. 140 what?
Well, it depends on if you include the vacation payout number.
Okay. Well,
But-
whatever it is.
134,000. If you include the PTO, it's 143. 143.
Okay. 143. Now, if we, and you've mentioned this several times, if we just terminate without cause and give him the contract, how much of an increase is that over it? Is it half or is it roughly half or what? In other words, what's the difference?
It's over half. That was my footnote number of 78,000 additional benefits that by my lawyer math is in addition to what he would receive pursuant to the terms of his employment agreement.
Okay. So again, that was 78. I missed it a little bit. Was it 70?
78,000.
Okay. Okay. So really what we're talking about here is based on his employment contract or based on this shift, the difference is about $78,000 out of the housing authority's pocket, correct?
Correct.
Okay, so that, and if we just terminated him without cause and saved that $78,000, right? What is the risk we face of doing that?
He could try to come up with a claim for something. I have not seen any red flags. He is an at-will employee. We are not terminating him based on any protected class or status. It's a business decision. So does that answer your question?
Yeah, no, I'm not advocating that. I just want the board to consider that we're talking about $78,000 roughly difference between the two approaches. We originally approached it from the standpoint of a mutual win-win kind of situation, and now we're getting into, is it more of a win-lose situation in the sense that we're just kind of cratering into whatever they want, but the total cost to us is under $80,000. So I just want people to understand that. That's all.
From my perspective, the real cost is in the transition itself. We want a smooth transition. We want him to be productive through June 1st. Because there's a lot of things that are hanging out there, some of which we probably don't know about. And that's, to me, the value of the $78,000.
George, I'm a little perplexed on something. So on the attorney's comment, he said that Kathy and Jason made some deal on January 20th. Well, that doesn't make sense because the board hadn't even made a decision. Right? I mean, we had some discussion.
I was not even aware of this discussion at that point.
Okay,
I
so
responded to the attorney and said whatever conversation that Kathy had, it was without any discussion with the board. It was not an offer. It was certainly not a binding offer. It was a conceptual discussion. He responded offensively to me, basically saying I was full of crap.
does that open us up to any liability?
I don't think so. Unless he has a tape recording that says Kathy knew exactly what kind of health benefits he had.
And she would not have authority to do that anyways.
He said that?
That's essentially what he was saying in his first statement. That his conversation with Kathy.
No, I got the tape recording.
No.
Dan has his hand raised.
Yeah, thank you. I just wanted to, I believe it was Lou who mentioned the non-monetary costs in terms of, him staying with us through the end of, through the transition period. And I would just like to echo that, right? Like, I think that from a reputation and optics perspective, to me, it seems very important that I would say that there's a lot of value to us, being able to say that this was truly a mutual separation agreement. And I think that, not only from the optics and reputation side, but also from the attracting of a new, successor to Jason, I think that will weigh heavily on the mind of anybody who's considering that role. And I would just, urge the board. I'm sure that's, kind of in the back of everyone's mind here as well. But I think that needs to be said.
Dan, this is not necessarily legal, but I feel like Jason has also a large incentive, regardless of this agreement or not, to not burn the organization down on his way out, because he's going to be seeking future employment And absent this agreement, we can give accurate, if he truly does something really bad or just checks out, that's not going to look great for a future employer who's certainly going to, you know, contact us given his 10+ years of employment.
Any other comments?
I'm just not sure if we've reached any level of consensus. Are we gonna?
No, and I would echo Lou's comment, and that is, at some point, we either say it's take it or leave it.
Yep.
Continuing till April 9th. And just saying, we're gonna continue talking about it. I don't think that's a good strategy.
If I may.
Yes.
I think there's probably two outcomes to this meeting. Is you approve either what I sent you or something similar to what I sent you, and it is take it or leave it. Or if you don't want to go the take it or leave it approach and just want to just roll over and say whatever Jason wants, we have his agreement as well from last week.
I would prefer not to do that, just because I think now it's getting personal.
I think it's a very bad tack to take. Don't take it personally, and because if you take it personal, taking it personal on behalf of all of us, so careful with your comments now. You were in talk session.
Okay. I would say, you know, the benefit package, the difference between medical pay and $4,000. If we give that up, we keep the prevailing legal stuff in there, then that's the deal. I don't know if anyone else agrees with that.
I agree with it. That's
Okay.
But Mark did state that earlier. I think that in good faith, offering the extra $4,000 coverage, if that was his understanding, that's a misunderstanding, whatever. And then, I don't know why they're digging their heel. He is digging, the attorney is digging his heels into the provision, but I want to keep that in there. So, if you can amend the agreement, I would be in favor of an amendment to the insurance coverage and keeping their provision that they do not like in there.
I'm sorry, what was that?
I would be in favor of amending the health coverage to include the family's dental vision.
The old number.
The old number, or I guess keep the original number there. At a cost of roughly $4,000 to us, but as an exchange, keep the attorney fees provision in place.
For the record with you, Steve, because you were asking about numbers, that does increase the numbers we were talking about by 4,000.
I understand. Yep.
So when we say, you know, here's the deal, take it or leave it, what does that mean? If he leaves it?
Status quo, he remains an employee. We can talk about it next meeting, I guess.
Okay, or is that when you say this is terminated?
We're not gonna, there's no action item on the agenda today to terminate Jason Beasley without cause.
I'm not saying that's what we should do right now. I'm asking you if that's the take it or leave it position.
If he leaves it,
yeah,
and you all want to continue, you still want to sever the relationship with Jason, which I believe that train has left the station.
Yes.
That would be the alternative.
Okay, that's all I wanted to know.
I think what you're really asking, Lou, is the board prepared to deal with just those two alternatives?
Yeah, the take it or leave it means, okay, I guess he's still employed.
Well, he would still be employed even if he signed this mutual separation until June 1st. But
we're gonna negotiate through it forever.
But it's truly just this attorney's fee provision now, that is the hanger.
Yeah. It's the people that have spoken so far don't seem to care about the additional $4,000 in healthcare, which bumps the cost of this severance package up to $140,000 and change. Everyone that's spoken has spoken in favor of having the attorney's fees provision in there. The inclusion of the numbers in some form or fashion. I don't know why, I can guess, even though we're being very loud about it in this meeting. But what do y'all think about that?
I think it should be an exhibit, so just big picture. These sorts of situations are, I mean, it's difficult, it's not fun. These are hard decisions. And they come with a lot of forethought and a lot of pain and certainly different opinions. But at the end of the day, it's a decision I think that we've made and that he's made. And he's offered, he came into a meeting where we were going to discuss whether we were going to do this, and he came in with the offer. So he'd given it a great deal of thought. So I think we're at the spot where we're moving forward with this. So it's, how do you move forward fairly? The suggestion from his attorney that we're not compromising and that we're not being fair, I disagree with. I'm not sure what more financially you could offer. I mean, this is a very reasonable offer. It's double. It's more than double what he would get if we just implemented the language that exists in his existing employment contract. We don't want to do that because we don't think that's fair. So we have discussed going this extra step, which is double that compensation. I think it's a good compromise. I think it's being fair. And I don't, the attorney's fee language is, I mean, he's not going to screw up, so there's no issue. There shouldn't be any issue with him, so I think it's fine. I think we should proceed with what we've said. And if he doesn't take that, then you need to take this.
Question, George, the attorney's fees, number 10, that is in here, in the other agreement that we reviewed last week that Jason presented, that was just struck.
Correct.
So there wasn't an attorney's fee section that says we pay for his attorneys. It was just struck, it was just removed completely.
You're talking about last week, his version?
Yeah.
The one that had
I have a lot of versions.
The 100,000 in it, that's gone.
No, we're not, we're talking.
No, I'm not talking about that.
This was us paying his attorney to represent him.
No, we're not talking about that.
No, we're not talking about that either.
Family attorney.
No, I guess I think it's this version where it's just not in, like this version is ours that's in here. And then this other one from last week, it's just not in there.
That's his version.
Is this
that
his version?
I included for you all to see.
Right. And so could you just explain to the board again what striking that, removing that part means for us?
So without an attorney's fee provision, in a contract, any contract, it does not prevent a party from suing the other party for breach or anything like that. What it does do under what's called the American rule is absent a attorney's fees provision in a contract, each side pays their own attorneys regardless of who wins the lawsuit.
And that's what Jason is asking for.
Correct.
So Jason is asking that each organization pays their own lawyer's fees regardless of who wins.
Correct.
He's not asking that we pay for his fees.
He's not. In fact, he's removing the ability for us to pay his fees in the event that he would win a lawsuit.
If without an attorney's fees provision, if he won a lawsuit against the housing authority, whatever attorney's fees he had incurred in doing so, he would be responsible for.
And if we won, we would be responsible for it.
Your own, not
Our own.
his.
Oh,
Yes.
okay, so he's just asking for it to be removed, not asking that we pay his attorney's fees. Cause I think there's confusion. I think people from the conversation I'm hearing are thinking that he's asking us to pay his attorney's fees. He's just asking for that to be removed. If a lawsuit happens, each party pays for their own fees.
But, okay.
But I mean, is it, sorry, I'm not to play armchair lawyer here, but I think that that's like kind of the intention of that provision in general is to like reduce like the likelihood of like.
It's just like litigation.
Yeah, to stifle it. So
I
by
agree.
putting your hand to the fire, that if you really want to go for it, you gotta go for it, you gotta be all in. That's really more the point, but also it's a financial protection that.
I just want everyone to understand, because I thought I had heard some comments in this discussion that he wanted us to pay for his fees, and that's not accurate.
To be perfectly clear, there was a discussion, a comment, I think by Lou. There was initially, it was never in any of these agreements, but he had requested that there be a provision that some of his attorney's fees in reviewing and drafting these documents be included. That has never been included in any document that you have seen. Mark talked about a separate issue about liquidated damages. We're not talking about that at all. What we are talking about is whether the contract, if it does not have an attorney's fees provision, and the housing authority is forced, or not forced, but sues Jason for breaching the agreement in some way without an attorney's fees provision, regardless of the outcome of the lawsuit, each party would pay their own attorneys. So if Jason did breach the agreement and the housing authority sues him and the housing authority gets $100,000 judgment, but they spent $200,000 on attorney's fees to get that, they are negative $100,000 for enforcing the agreement. With an attorney's fee provision in there, as I presented, the prevailing party of a lawsuit gets their attorney's fees paid for by the other party, in addition to whatever damages are awarded by the court. So in the same example, the housing authority sues Jason for some breach. The judge says, yes, there was, the damages are $100,000. Jason pays the housing authority $100,000 in damages, and then whatever the attorney's fees incurred by the housing authority are. These are in 99, perhaps more % of contractual agreements. To have them out is a red flag, right? Because it is meant, the reason why you don't want to have those in is because you want the person thinking, well, the other side really did breach the agreement, but I'm going to spend $200,000 in attorney's fees to get it, and that's going to be out of pocket. So even if I get 200 grand, I'm just right where I started.
To me, the inference is, that's a weird inference. They're concerned that Jason will breach the agreement. If Jason does not breach the agreement, then it's no big deal.
That is a reasonable conclusion.
At the end of the day, this language that we'd like to have in, George already said it. I don't think there's a document, I mean, I've been doing this for 50 years. I don't think there's a document that I've done that didn't have it in it. It's the oddity would to not have it be in there. Just standard.
I understand. I was just clarifying.
Did I adequately
Yeah,
clarify?
yeah, I was just clarifying because I think that I don't think that needs to be explained to me, Mark.
Yeah, and if It sounds like, from the lawyer's quote, given the disparate financial positions of Jason and YVHA, I can think of no reason why Jason should agree to this. I don't think that, I mean, false pretenses aside, I don't think that he's saying that he's afraid Jason's gonna violate this or that they're thinking about a lawsuit. It's just YVHA has more assets and resources than Jason. And that's their reason, which I don't think is good reasoning.
In some context, that is valid.
Yeah.
But that the housing authority is going to sue on dubious grounds and just burn him in attorney's fees does not seem to be a reasonable suspicion on my part.
Would it be fair to say that it's the fiduciary responsibility of this board to keep that provision in?
Yes.
Yes, I would agree.
And you've probably already said that to him.
And I would also add that it's probably the fiduciary responsibility for clarity of the community to have the footnote in or as to how we arrived at the total sum of the package.
That's the point.
I think that can be an exhibit, like.
Yeah, by putting it as the same, I'm not used to public displays of financial stuff. We would never have that clause in any of the companies I've worked for or operated.
You're a private company.
Yeah, of course.
This is not.
And this is different, and I understand that part.
I mean, it doesn't matter. I don't know that I have a strong preference for it to be a footnote versus an exhibit. It just needs to be it needs to be something that's.
Oh, no, the objection comes from their attorney.
But I mean, if you had included it as an exhibit, like, it seems that he probably would have raised the same concern, whether it was an exhibit, attachment, or in the footnote.
I agree.
He just takes issue with it being in there at all.
Well, again, from the lawyer's comment, it's the comparing to the original, to the termination cost is his problem.
I did not put it that way.
Assuming that we reach an agreement as to the terms of the MSA, YVHA is elected not to exercise any right to terminate Jason, and therefore it's the employment cost of the termination is not important.
I think if I had put the 140 number in there, he would have had the same comment.
And
I
that's
still think
Same
that
objection.
most of the community doesn't know the terms of Jason's employment contract, and so this just helps everyone understand how we arrived at the number, because if you can't see the line items that aggregate to the total, add up to the total, then you're just speculating that we just gave him some big package that's random and unjustified. I think we're all saying that we agree with the number and that's the right thing to do, and we're all confident around that, but the math just needs to be.
I will say that number, we don't know that number. So we either have to put a big asterisk on that to say estimated as of this date, or because that number is not going to be what's paid out at the end of the day.
Sorry that I started interrupting you. My thought is if you are wanting it to be an exhibit at somewhere probably at the end of the severance benefits section, there is an estimated rough something spreadsheet that outlines or reflects what we were just talking about in this section in exhibit 1.
And I would remove the comparison to the termination. That number's not important.
From the spreadsheet that Sandy had, you mean?
Or from any exhibit that is based off of that spreadsheet.
The footnote.
I mean, I intended, I was going to remove the footnote in lieu of the exhibit, which I intend to be this.
Right. I just hide the cells of the termination numbers. Because 1, we're going to confuse people.
All right.
And 2, it's not.
Sandy and I'll do something.
I just want to make a point that the total cost of separation and the final paycheck are 2 different things. Because the final paycheck includes June 1st. It includes his vacation payout, which is our policy, and he's already earned that money. And those are not included in the severance cost.
All right, I'm gonna try to take the outstanding items one at a time and see wherever, and take the temperature so we can give George final direction.
Well, I think we're voting today. There's a consensus in the group. We just need to be clear on what we're voting.
All right. I've heard from several of you. There seems to be, at least with the people that have spoken, a consensus about moving the footnote in lieu of an exhibit that will be finalized with me and Sandy. The $4,000 additional health care. The people that have spoken seem to be fine with that. The attorney's fee provision is included. Does anyone else here, one, want to say anything? Two, particularly if you disagree with any of that, please say something. Okay, I will take that as the conversation. There is one final thing from that email from the attorney. They had proposed a change to the non-disparagement provision that would limit it to public statements. I noted in my email, I didn't have particularly strong opinion one way or the other on that. Private statements are difficult to prove up, certainly unless someone squeals. But I mean, the difference between private and public can sometimes blur. If Jason is in a private meeting with Chaffa and is talking smack about the housing authority, we probably wouldn't hear about it, but if we did, that wouldn't be great. It would not cover. I'm just throwing out for discussion. What do y'all think about the alternatives to the non-disparagement?
I think it's fine.
Yeah, the language seems fine to me.
Okay,
What do you recommend, George?
I don't.
You wrote, which may be acceptable or even better than the existing language.
Well, part of it is I don't want any of you getting in trouble for talking smack about Jason at some dinner party.
Right.
That's
what I was thinking.
So it's not terrible. I think you're mostly concerned about, you know, at some hearing or something, Jason getting up and saying something anti-housing authority, or at least a theoretical concern. I don't have a problem with it. Just not fair.
All right, well then,
Would your recommendation be that we make a motion to approve the agreement on the conditions of these changes being made, or what would the recommendation be?
From what I'm hearing, if I was a board member, I probably move to approve the mutual separation agreement as presented by George via email on Tuesday, except that the change to the healthcare amount from the prior version is returned to the $13,000 and change number. The footnote on page 1 be removed, but with a reference to an exhibit being added, and that exhibit being something similar to the spreadsheet previously provided, subject to accounting or HR and accounting's finalization of that the attorney fee provision, which is included in my document, remain, and that the non-disparagement provision suggested by Jason's attorney via email to George be replacing the non-disparagement provision it's currently drafted in the document.
So moved.
My motion.
Yes.
So moved, yes.
okay, wait a minute.
Hoping and elegant.
I moved with that exact motion. Sarah can.
Yeah, okay, I think I got it, but you want to just send that to me?
Second, yeah.
So it's a motion by Cole and a second by Lou.
I have a comment, Kathy. I just want to comment on this. I want to say that, you know, Jason, when he came to the board years ago, as I mentioned earlier, our fund balance was negative. We were underwater. We owned property that virtually all the money we got from the city and county was paying interest. Jason put together a plan when other people could not to, you know, get the LIHTC programs going. He built hundreds of homes. And he didn't just build homes, he built a community, he built communities. He changed lives. Very few people can really, at the end of their business, at the end of a business day, say they actually changed lives and made a real difference to our community. And Jason did. He worked with former Commissioner Doug Longer and got something we thought was impossible at the time to get the Colorado Power and Water to do a grant and a loan to, you know, we do the Fish Creek water and sewer infrastructure. He is the reason Creek, and amongst the madness of mobile homes, is still affordable. So I'm prefacing that by saying that over my years in the Housing Authority Board, every vote I've made has been what I felt is best for our community. I do not feel, I feel that losing Jason Peasley is not in the best interest of our community. So I am going to respectfully vote no on this because I think that losing Jason is a big loss. So I'm voting no on this motion.
All right, any other comments? We have a motion on the floor.
I'll just make a comment that Board of County Commissioners has discussed this in our work sessions since the last meeting was public. And we were appreciative of the conversations surrounding, you know, nailing down numbers for health insurance and nailing down like the total severance cost, and that was important to the discussion. And both commissioners recognize, or aside myself, my fellow commissioners recognize Jason Peasley's service and were disappointed that the Housing Authority would be losing him. Jason gave a presentation to the commissioners about keeping grant money that the Housing Authority still had for Brown Ranch. And in that meeting, Commissioner Macy's expressed a lot of these comments publicly to Jason and how frustrated I think our board was that this is the direction that we are going and that the Board of County Commissioners is supporting this. And my vote will be yes, because it is mutual and Jason came to the table saying he was ready to leave, but that we would not support a termination. So if that is the direction we are going, that can be stated for the record.
Any other comment?
I would make one comment. This is Steve from City Council. I think we all appreciate what Jason has done for the community, how he has led to 401 new housing units for people in this town. I will be voting yes in support of this. And I do have the support of the rest of council to vote what I think is in the best interest. So I will be voting yes.
John?
Yeah, I'm really torn between this. I understand we need to move on and move on. I want to do this. But I've been with Housing Authority from the very beginning. Saw us go through several executive directors. One of my scored out when we terminated him. Did a really good job of doing that because he's a friend of mine, unfortunately. And so my no vote is not against what you're trying to do here. My no vote is kind of in protest for the way this whole thing was handled in the very beginning. I'm kind of ashamed of it. I'm surprised it happened this way. I didn't sign on for this kind of activity. And so my vote is kind of a protest of we need to come back here and work on what the retreat started. We need to work on our organization. We need to work as a working board, and we need to take some more responsibility. Not that we haven't. We need to look at our executive committee and how we make decisions in our draft. So it's kind of a protest vote for that. Even though I hope you guys all vote yes. I'm sorry.
All right, any other comments? All right, then I will call the question. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Did I get Dan and Steve's vote?
I vote aye.
Aye.
Thank you. So the motion carries. All right.
You guys.
Do you want to go get him?
Oh, is he here?
He's probably an OTP.
I thought his stuff, no, his stuff is.
Oh,
Okay. 2:00.
Oh.
And so the next question is whether we move to the next item or whether we postpone that till the April 9th.
Yeah.
Pardon?
This mill levy discussion?
Yes.
No, we need, I strongly, and actually, I'd like to say that I don't think you should have a mill levy discussion. I think we should have an overall funding discussion of our short-term, long-term funding of our board, so I definitely say postpone that item.
Okay. Does anybody disagree to a postponement? All right, then.
Can I make a suggestion though?
Yes.
It does feel like some alignment around the order, like the mill levy and the ED profile search, the strategic plan, the funding approach, all of those things are individual issues, but they're all completely linked. It would be good to have consensus from the board about what needs to happen first. Like, what's the order that we're gonna tackle those topics? And so that we can at least know that as we make one decision, it sort of builds on the next. They're gonna be tackled. So maybe we could have that be one of the questions as it relates to the debriefing of October 10th.
What about?
Like, are we postponing the mill levy discussion until next meeting or until we've ironed out ABC and B?
What I was gonna suggest is, we've got a list of board meetings and suggested topics. And hopefully, we can have that finalized and then use that as a template to talk about which should go first, which should go last. And that could be a follow-on to the discussion on how we got here anyway.
I'll jump in with Michael and say, I think that we need the top priorities, we need to talk about the transition plan and the overall board governance. Those are critical, our guardrails. And we need to figure out who's gonna be on the Slate Creek Committee, whatever it's called. And I think other things such as the long-term funding of the organization follows after, maybe after we set those guardrails. Because that's a tactical matter.
John?
If, when we do the mill levy, I sat down with Sandy a couple months ago and she went over the prognosis of what a half mill levy, what a mill levy, what a no mill levy, and how much money we'd have and when we'd be in the red. We'd like her to send that to everybody in detail so that her best projections that we understand what it looks like.
Okay, as long as everyone understands it changes every day.
It's okay.
We are going to have it on the agenda for the next month's finance team meeting, so if anyone's very interested in seeing it. It's much more easy to understand when I can.
Right.
Live spreadsheet and show if this goes away, the bottom line changes. Just printing a PDF.
I sat down with you and in 15, 20 minutes, it was just clear as.
Oh, good. Okay.
So if you can do that, I appreciate it.
Good. You guys talk about it. I'll send it.
All right, are there any other topics for the good of the order? If not, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
Second.
I have a motion by Lou and a second by Maddie. Or was that Kath? Maddie. Any further discussion on the motion? If not, I'll call the question. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Motion carries. Thank you, everybody.
Right now.